All right, no signs of Russia-Ukraine war coming to an end anytime soon. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday said that peace talks with Ukraine has hit a dead end. Putin, meanwhile, has said that Moscow would achieve all its aims in Ukraine and will continue its war until its goals are met. Russian president has called Ukraine's Bucha war claims as fake, saying that Kiev's claims on Bucha has resulted in peace talks to derail. Putin has attacked the West as well and its allies, saying no one can isolate Russia from this modern world. Putin's comments came at a time when Russia has reassessed its war goals, now focusing on eastern Ukraine. Port city Mariupol is now bracing for yet another last intense battle. Ukraine has also witnessed a missile strike on a central railway station, due to which routes of 17 trains were changed. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has claimed thousands have been killed in the port city due to heavy Russian shelling. Eastern Ukraine Donbas region has also now become Putin's center of attention. We're looking at Governor of Luhansk now claiming that at least 400 civilians have died near front lines of eastern Ukraine since the Russian onslaught. All right, let me quickly cut across to our reporter joining us live, Maushmi Singh, who's been on ground Ukraine, bringing us all the factual details amid those hostilities. Maushmi, you are in Kiev, Ukraine. Give us an understanding on day 49 of this war. What's the situation there? Show us what's behind you.
Right, Nabila, first a quick update. We are in a city which has been under attack, continuous attack from the initial days of war. On the borderline, there are continuous battles that are happening because this is bordering Kherson region, which is called Oblast here. And we are right now, this is also an aspect of war because we have been told by the military authorities to stay indoors. There are regular checks and verifications that happen of journalists as well. Certain sensitive infrastructure is forbidden to telecast, so it is a part of the daily routine that they check and verify our documents. So we are waiting for the officer who would come and check our documents, and we will continue our ground report. Now I want to show you, Nabila, that how this entire region is actually located. As I told you, that this is the Dnipro region. It's called the Dnipro Oblast. We are in Kiev, which is at the center. It's President Zelenskyy's hometown. We've traveled all the way from Lviv, which is on the western border. Now the entire fight, as I told you, has progressed to the southern and the eastern side. Southern side because the entire Black Sea is under siege and there are continuous artillery and shelling.
Right. What are those cities along the southern side that are at risk, Maushmi? What are the cities on southern side?
All right, Nabila, so I would like to tell our viewers that if you look at this, we are in Mykolaiv. Parminder will zoom in. This is Odessa. We've traveled from Lviv all the way from the west to Odessa, which is a major port city that is under target of the Russians, but they are very far away. They are on the border of Mykolaiv, where you see this black line, and they want to, in fact, get Mykolaiv so that they can get the road access to Odessa, which will be capturing the entire, cutting Ukraine off the sea route. And that's one reason why there is shelling continuously. Shelling at the airport was bombed, right, because they wanted to take control of the Mykolaiv airport. They couldn't do so. So all these reports we are filing from ground zero, and importantly 15 villages on the outskirts are under Russian occupation, and the Kiev forces are fighting that battle on the borderline. We'll be getting reports from that point as well, Nabila.
Maushmi, stay with us. I'm going to quickly cut across to Rajesh Pawar, who's also joining us from the capital city of Kiev. Rajesh, it's such confused messaging and signaling going out to citizens of Ukraine. Many of them initially thought, in fact, over the last week or so, felt like some of those areas like Kiev, capital city, could be safe for them to return. But now with Russia reaffirming that the war is far from over, that they're going to ensure they're going to be meeting their goals, almost a warning going out to people there who are fighting for their country, that they could not be safe anymore. Here you see millions of citizens, locals who are fleeing. Those who want to stay also are unsure of their safety. Give us an understanding on how is the Ukrainian government really instilling confidence among those who managed to stay back?
Look, Nabila, the government has made it very clear for the citizens not to come back as yet, but there are a lot of citizens who had not gone across the borders, who had gone to nearby villages or other cities, especially in central Ukraine. They are coming back. People are coming back to Kiev every day. We see long queue of vehicles entering inside Kiev. So a lot of people are coming back to Kiev now. Also, I got reports that even on the Poland border, there are a lot of cars queued up on the other side, that is entering from Poland into Ukraine. So people who had left the country are also coming back, especially in the central and west of Ukraine. But having said that, in the east of and south of Ukraine, fighting has intensified, and intelligence reports are saying that in coming few days, the fighting will be even more intense. So I believe people in the south and southeast of Ukraine are still leaving their cities, their hometowns, and are fleeing towards west. But as far as central and western Ukraine is concerned, people are coming back. Nabila.
You know, Rajesh, with the way Russia has been repositioning time and again in the last few weeks, it's very confusing on what are the safe zones and what are not any longer. Could you show us right outside Kiev that you are at? What's around you? What's the environment like? Do we see an ED silence?
See, it's not permitted like
Please
this
be safe,
very
though.
safely because I'm doing the phone. But if you see this one of the central squares, I'm here. I'm on one of the squares here. This is an area which is on the left bank of the river, and this is one of the main squares here called Leningrad Square here.
Yeah. So we see activity happening there.
Yeah, there's a lot of traffic here. As I said, during the initial days of the war, the whole area was almost deserted. Now you see normal traffic returning back. Life in Kiev is returning back to normal. Not the way it was before the war, but certainly much better than the initial weeks of the war. Things are getting better here, Nabila.
All right. In that case, there seems to be a message that's gone out to citizens of Ukraine, from what we understand and what you've told us, that Russian forces are now headed towards, and their focus now is eastern Donbas region. And that's why we see many citizens trying to return to many key areas like Kiev. But Rajesh, thank you very much. Stay with us. We have more updates coming in. With no end to this war, Russian onslaught continues in many areas of Ukraine. Zelenskyy has come up with an exchange offer for Russia. Ukrainian president has offered to swap a top Putin ally for Ukrainian war prisoners. Here's more on that.
Nearly 50 days of war and no breakthrough in sight. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has a new offer for his Russian counterpart. And this man is at the center of that offer. Viktor Medvedchuk is the head of the pro-Russian party and the most high-profile pro-Kremlin lawmaker in Ukraine. He was finally arrested on charges of treason as he was trying to escape abroad when the invasion began. In his latest proposal, Zelenskyy is willing to swap this top Putin ally for the Ukrainian prisoners of war held captive by Russia.
На наших хлопців і наших дівчат, які зараз
I propose to the Russian Federation to exchange this guy of yours for our boys and our girls who are now in Russian captivity. It is very symbolic that Mr. Medvedchuk was detained on Cosmonautic Day. He has been hiding for 48 days, but finally he decided to try to escape from our country. Well, for this astronaut, the famous Poekhali did not work out.
цього космонавта у поганому сенсі слова.
Putin and Medvedchuk's friendship dates back to 2003. Over the decades, Medvedchuk used his friendship with Putin to hold his ground as one of Ukraine's most powerful backroom politicians. Medvedchuk has often visited Putin in Moscow and even joined him to watch Formula One races. As per reports, Medvedchuk was the top contender as Zelenskyy's replacement as Kremlin's puppet after invasion.
A very close aide in a way, or someone who's considered very close to the Russian President Vladimir Putin has been arrested here. Viktor Medvedchuk, he's been arrested. He's an opposition leader. The SBU, the Special Intelligence Unit, arrested him late last night.
Putin, however, is unfazed, and he asserted that Moscow would achieve all of its aims in Ukraine and will continue its war until all goals are met.
такая общий настрой.
Mind you, yesterday evening I was told that Ukrainian side has changed something again. I am not aware of what exactly yet. But such inconsistency in approaching key issues creates some difficulties in reaching the final agreement acceptable for everyone in the course of negotiations. And until it happens, the military operations will continue until its full completion and achievement of the targets set as the start of the operation.
Они всегда просчитываются, не понимая, что в сложных условиях.
The US continues to criticize Putin for the onslaught on Ukraine.
I call this genocide because it becomes clearer and clearer that Putin is just trying to wipe out the idea of being able to clean Ukraine. And the evidence is mounting. It's different than it was last week. The more evidence is coming out of literally the horrible thing that the Russians have done in Ukraine. And we're going to only learn more and more about the devastation.
Nearly 50 days and counting, the world is waiting and watching. When will this war end? With Gaurav Sawant, Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, my colleague Rajesh Pawar brings us this ground report from Bagdanka, a village near Brovary, 30 kilometers from the capital city of Kiev in Ukraine. An intense battle has broken out between Russia and Ukrainian troops there across that region. Braving all those hostilities, here's our ground report.
I'm right now standing in a tank pit. A tank pit is a dugout in the ground where you hide your tank so that it is not visible to the approaching enemy tanks. At the same time, it can see them and can fire on them and can stop them. And since it is protected by the pit, it is a depression in the ground, so it is safe. But see what remains of this tank, because the weapon which was used to fire on this was a top attack weapon. So the pit could not protect it. And look around, there's a bund of the road all over bund, and this side there is dense forest. So this pit could not have been approached from any side by enemy tanks. It was safe and it was dug inside in the depression, but it was still totally destroyed because the weapon used to destroy it was a kind of missile which attacks from the top, and it brings total devastation, total destruction to any machine, even if it's thick steel, thick armor of thick steel. Look, nothing is left of this, and the debris of this tank are lying in 400 to 500 meters from here, and the turret of this tank has gone across the road about 50 meters. It had tons of steel which flew across the road and fell inside and gone inside a concrete floor, almost inside the floor now. It was so much of the impact. So this is the kind of destructive power modern anti-tank weapons have, and this makes us think that new tactics have to be evolved in case in modern warfare, in case you have to fight with this kind of conventional tactics, it has to be different now. It cannot go on what it was 20 years back. This is Rajesh Pawar for India Today. I'm in between an area between Zelenskyy village and Skiven village. This area is on the outskirts of Brovary, where a fierce tank battle took place in this area about 3 weeks back. And here see behind me is a totally destroyed turret of a tank, and that's the chassis of a tank. Again here we see a typical signature of a top attack missile being used to destroy these tanks. The top attack, most likely a Javelin missile, can be a TB2, or even if switchblades had reached Ukrainian army by then, probably a switchblade switchblades have been used to destroy this tank, and they all attack from the top, which is the weakest part of the tank. Let me show you the kind of destruction it has caused. Look, this inside the turret, look, this is the main gun, and thick solid steel has melted and has totally destroyed it. This is the base of the main gun of the tank. I'll show you from outside. You see, that's the main gun. The base I just showed you, and there's a turret which fell off after the attack from the chassis. This is a chassis, and if you see, even the tracks are intact. This was in a position, a defensive position. This tank facing that side anticipating any kind of Ukraine attack. And this uniform, this pattern of uniform is generally used by the Russian army. So we can say this was a Russian tank. And that's the engine of the tank, totally destroyed here. And if you see behind me is a field, total open field, because they're anticipating some kind of resistance from the Ukraine forces, Ukraine armor coming from this field. And the ideal tank country this is, and this is where a lot of destruction was caused to the Russian troops by the armament supplied by the Americans and NATO to Ukrainian forces, like Javelin missiles or switchblade drones. This is Rajesh Pawar for India Today. I'm right now in Zelenskyy village, which is about 6 to 7 kilometers east of Brovary, where a fierce tank battle took place between the two forces. The fierce tank battle in and around Kiev seen in this area. And this is a destroyed tank, and this is again has been destroyed by a top attack. If you see, the tracks are intact, the tracks of the tank are intact. There is no impact from the side, but the top has been destroyed, and that is a turret. Turret has gone and fallen there of this tank. So this has been probably attacked by a Javelin missile or by a TB2 missile or by a drone, which generally attacks from top, which is the softest part of the tank. This is Rajesh Pawar from Zelenskyy for India Today.
Meanwhile, Slovakia is currently in talks with Ukraine on sending MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. Kiev has been seeking more weapons and equipment from the West ahead of this new Russian offensive in eastern parts of Ukraine. My colleague Gaurav Sawant brings us more on this report. Let's have a listen.
It could be a major shot in the arm for Ukraine. Slovakia has said it is willing to provide MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. Slovakia has about a squadron of MiG-29s operational but not effectively being used in Slovakia. Slovakia is looking for F-16 fighter jets from the United States of America. Slovakia incidentally has provided the S-300 much needed missile defense shield system to Ukraine, which has already been deployed. So as countries like the United States and the United Kingdom provide Javelin anti-tank guided missiles and the Starstreak surface-to-air missiles and of course the Switchblade kamikaze drones, it's Slovakia that's giving the offensive weapons in terms of the MiG-29 fighter jet. Will this actually take place on ground? The modalities are still to be worked out. Remember, Poland in February had talked about giving a squadron plus of MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine, but not directly. They wanted to place them at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany and then have it transferred from there, and America called that untenable. That project was a non-starter. But what happens to this project now with Slovakia saying that they're open to the idea of MiG-29s being provided to Ukraine as long as their air defense needs are taken care of by the Patriot missile system provided by the United States of America and the F-16 fighter jets? Talks are on. Ukraine has more MiG-29 fighter pilots than aircraft at this stage. Ukraine has operated MiG-29 fighter jets and is keenly looking for offensive fighter jets from friendly countries. President Zelenskyy has repeatedly made a request for fighter jets and long-range missiles. Will this actually happen? All eyes now on Slovakia and Ukraine. With cameraman Lalit Mohan Joshi in Dnipro, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
Now, Russian economy is severely hit by multiple sanctions imposed on it by United States, United Kingdom, the EU, Canada, as well as Japan. These sanctions are maximum in range, opposed on any country. In fact, it's been imposed on any country in the recent past since the World War II. But for Russian President Vladimir Putin, they're all part of the game. He remains unfazed.
Banning secondary trade in Russian government bonds, banning interaction with key Russian banks, banning exports of critical technology to Russia and freezing the assets and banning travel for elite Russians. In addition, Germany halted certification of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Once the Russian invasion of Ukraine crossed 1 month, came a fresh batch of sanctions. This time, the United States tightened penalties on two of Russia's leading banks, including the country's largest financial institutions per bank, leaving in place an energy carve-out that allows them to process payments for oil and gas. The US also sanctioned Russian President Vladimir Putin's two adult daughters and the wife and daughter of Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. World Bank estimates that these sanctions will shrink Russian economy by more than 11% this year. But revenues from energy exports are actually increasing. Moscow expects to earn $9.6 billion in additional revenue from energy sales in April alone, thanks to high oil prices, which remain around $100 a barrel. Defiant against the Western sanctions and ever provocatively confident, the Russian president gloated about the progress of his army in Ukraine.
As for the progress of the operation, I can often hear questions if we can do it faster. We can. It depends on the intensity of military actions. The intensity of military actions is somehow related to losses, unfortunately. Our goal is to achieve all objectives, minimizing losses.
Nothing's changed in Vladimir Putin's world. The country has been hit by the maximum sanctions so far since the world wars.
If our partners aggravate the situation in the financial, insurance sphere, in the area of transport, including maritime transport, then the situation will worsen for them, among other things. Food shortages or incredibly high prices on world markets will lead to hunger in regions throughout the world. It's inevitable. The next step would be new wave of migration, including to the Western countries.
In Russia, indigenous businesses are eager to fill the gap created in domestic markets after the sanctions pushed Western companies out.
Of course, it's good for us all if they leave, because in that case, people will start to be interested in other brands of clothes. They will be interested in Russian brands. Before, when they needed jeans, they would buy it at Zara. Now, they start to look at who is on the market.
То сейчас они просто начинают вообще смотреть, кто вообще еще есть на рынке.
On a daily basis, some areas in Russia complained of shortage of sugar and salt. Putin's government arranged for special markets to allow people to restock.
I don't need much sugar, but it's just that it's not available at all.
The sanctions were supposed to hit the Russian economy hard. Ruble fell sharply. Pundits predict doom for Russian GDP, which is modest compared to the USA or the UK. But for the Russian president, who carries a fearsome black briefcase, prepared for any nuke trigger along with him all the time, the end is still not here. Bureau Report, India Today.